Exactly.
So let's kick this off with our first submission of the day. So this is a technology company from New York. What they're doing is cutting the time it takes for salespeople to get insights on their prospects. So this particular sequence is in the prospecting stage. The goal is to book a demo. It's a 3-touch sequence that goes out to competitive brands, so fashion, beauty, electronics, home, that kind of stuff. And they're looking at about a 6 to 7% reply rate right now, and a 2% book demo rate. So with that said, without further ado, let's take a look. So Belal, do you want to take a second to take a look at that?
Yeah, let's peruse it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So what's your first thoughts, man?
It's you know, it's the typical pattern, the typical beat, you know. Just that opening paragraph, unfortunately, just screams, I want to sell you something.
Right.
I hope you're staying well. I want to take a moment to say we really love what you do. Would love to connect. You already used the word love twice in the second sentence.
Lots of love.
A lot of love. A little bit too much love for somebody talking to me for the first time of my life. Just like, I don't even know who the hell you are. Why are you saying the word love so many times? Right? But that's what we do as salespeople. We get so hyped up. We throw a lot of love thinking that's what people want to hear.
Yeah.
2020 might be an unpredictable year. Yeah. So they tell me. You know, so I think the problem is the juice, you know, the good part of this email is way down buried in the third paragraph. Took me a while to get there. But this idea about track my competitors' ads sounds great. That sounds pretty useful. I mean, I don't think anybody would ever say, no, I don't care what my competitors do. I mean, it'd be interesting to know what they're doing.
Right.
I wonder if there's an easier way to show that than all of this verbiage. Like, could this company actually take their competitor's ad and actually just put that right dead in the middle of the email and just be like, here's your competitor's ad. Have you seen this one yet?
Right.
And do you know how it's performing?
Yeah, well, that's what I thought too. I looked at that and went, yeah, if you take it out of the context of the way that they described the solution, it's all about the solution, but there's that juice in there, like you said, it's that competitor's ads. That's really the thing, right?
Yeah.
That's something that really gets you, wow, that's interesting and breaks the mold of the standard day-to-day outbound.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want somebody helping them see their competitors' ads? Because there's enough to do in the day to keep you busy that you're not going to be able to check your competitors' ads, you know, as much as you'd like. But if your competitor had a really well-performing ad, I'm sure you'd want to know about it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
What job you're in. So yeah, I feel like this email could probably be 3 sentences instead of 3 paragraphs and still hit home pretty hard. Just getting straight to the point of like, when's the last time you checked your competitors' ads? Here's their top performing one. What do you think of insights like this? And that could literally be the email.
Right. And that right there, you speak to it, is that the CTA hears about that typical call, right? It's asking for the call. But what you just said is basically, what do you think? It's basically, what do you think?
Yeah.
Right? It's inspiring that question.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's very rare. Also, you get a product that you can literally show in a screenshot what it does or how it works that simply. But yeah, if you're the exception, not the norm like this, and you have a product that you can literally show in one by just showing like what your product actually does, go for it. That should always be your go-to, because that's not always the case. Very, very few times can you do that.
Yeah, totally. What do you think of the subject line?
It's fine. I mean, you know, like it's short at least, so they didn't try to go for something too fancy. I mean, if you wanted to be really nitpicky, you know, I think it's better to actually name the competitor. I'd put like competitor, company name, seller company. That'd be really interesting. Cause if I work at Adidas and you send me like, Nike, Adidas in your name, I'd be like, what's this about? Cause it's kind of a word play of
Yep.
like, well, I know that first company, that's my competitor. I know that second company, that's where I work. What's
Yep.
this third company about?
Right. How does this fit in? And then that's the curiosity that you solve for that curiosity in the email, and you've got yourself a very interested person, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking at a couple things that I see in here. You know, a couple kind of verbiage that I see pretty regularly is, how can we supplement your marketing strategy? So it's assuming that, are they seeking a supplement to their marketing strategy? Is this something
Yeah.
that they want, right? It's kind of assuming that these people are already looking for it. So this type of verbiage might work better as kind of like a follow-up to something where they're actively asking about something, but not necessarily for a cold outreach where you're almost doing what my daughter does. So I have a 4-year-old daughter. We were talking about it.
Yeah.
Just kind of starts me in the middle of a conversation that I don't even understand I'm having. you know, Or she'll walk up to a server at a restaurant and be like, "Did you know what my friend Aaliyah and Tia's do?" Blah 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 blah. Oh, what?
Yeah. I love
Don't
that.
feed my 4-year-old daughter. Okay.
Yeah. 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 That's so true. That's a great example. I love that.
Right on, right on. All right. Well, let's go to the next one. So this is step 2. This is day 3. So it's a wait 2 days step, and you've got this.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is a better email, undoubtedly. I love the word snoop. How often do you get to write the word snoop in your cold emails? Whenever you get to use a word that's super unusual and not in the normal language,
Yeah.
man, I'd go for that all day, every day. Um, this is a much better email, but again, I wonder if you even need this opening sentence at all. How cool this, I mean, we always like trim the fat, right? Like, let's trim the fat. We got another, I'm happy and open to chat, and wondering if you'd be open. I don't know how many times the word open appears, but that's at least twice there. Again, it's like, you're a little too loving, you're a little too open with me. I don't know who you are. Yeah. There's a lot of love and openness and caring here for a stranger emailing a stranger. So I think that's just common. Again, we get into that sales mode and we start using words like that we normally wouldn't say
Yeah.
otherwise. But imagine if this email is literally just like, the subject line was the word Snoop,
Yeah.
and the opening line was like, Snoop on competitors, influencer, and ad campaigns. And that was the opening sentence. I think people would be really curious to see why a company, what exactly a company could do to help them snoop like that.
Right.
It's such a weird email to get. I mean, how many cold emails have the subject line Snoop? You know what I mean?
No, none. Like
None. I don't think any.
I haven't seen it once. No, that's awesome. So, what about so what would you say is the one thing then you would change on this email? You're saying the subject line, and then I guess combine that with the,
Yeah, I would just get straight to the point. I was wondering if you'd be open for a quick thing. They know how to respond to emails. You don't need to ask people if they'd be wondering. Don't wander. No, no wandering. Okay, be decisive. Don't wonder for people, and don't ask them if they're wondering. There's really no reason to talk about advanced analytics. That's a buzzword. Nobody cares.
yeah,
But these 3 super features. What if this email just opened up with literally Snoop on competitors, influencer, and ad campaigns, and get monthly reports on them,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it was just a question mark, like, turn these bullet points into question marks. Like, what would you do if you could snoop on your competitors, influencer, and ad campaigns, and get in-depth analytics on how they're performing? Question mark. Because
Right.
I think when we make statements and we do bullet points, it sounds really nice in our heads,
Yeah.
but the person reading on the other side has no clue who the hell you are, why the hell you're emailing them.
Right.
And you want to, this is something that took me a really long time to learn, Jeff.
Yeah.
I kept forgetting that the person on the other side is reading this email in their head using their internal voice, right? Like that voice in your head that you have.
Right.
And if I'm talking to that voice in their head, it's kind of like a little bit of psychology. If I talk to the voice in somebody else's head,
Yeah.
like I'm giving them a conversation to have in their head, that's a win. Very few sellers ever achieve an email that causes somebody to have a conversation in their head, because oftentimes we're talking based on our own contextual understanding of our product or service instead of trying to spark a conversation in our reader's head. So we make bullet point statements because we know our product features. So we call them super features and we make a nice little bullet point list.
Yeah.
They have no clue what our product does, what it is, what it's called. They've never heard of it in their lives.
Right.
What if we ask them that question? Instead of turning our features into a bullet point list, we turn our features into a question. What would you do if you could snoop? What would change in your world if you had in-depth analytics? Those sort of questions. And then you're making the reader actually answer them in their head. And that was your cold email, right? Now you're just sparking curiosity.
No, so I like that. I like that. And it actually makes me think of something. I'd love your opinion on this. I've got my own, but I want to hear yours. Bullets themselves, what do you think of presenting multiple ideas in an email?
Usually I avoid it because I'm very much in that camp of like fit it on a mobile screen. So like if I've got 3 super features, I'm not going to put all 3 in an email because I'm firing too many shots at once. I'll do one email with one email with another, and an email with a third. I'm fine with doing 3 touches that way.
Right.
And hopefully stacking my strongest feature in the later stages, not in the early stages, as I warm the person up and they notice that, oh, this person's like emailing me. They're actually emailing me pretty interesting questions. And this latest one is probably the most interesting one. Because
Right.
my highest response touch in any cold sequence that I've ever done is usually touch 4 to 7.
Right.
Usually somewhere between 4 and 7 touches when I get my highest response rate. And that's typically where brand recognition occurs. So there's some loose psychology on this that says you have to do a minimum of 7 references for somebody to actually form brand recognition in their brain. So if I tell you about a company you've never heard of today, I have to say it 6 more times before you go, I think I've heard of that before. And I'm like, yeah, because I've been saying it for like
Right.
7 times.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I mean, that brings up another thing is that, so some people like to do a lot of touches at the beginning. So in the first week, you're doing like 5, 6 touches, and then they kind of taper off. And then there's others that advocate doing what I've been called the crazy X. I've heard it's called the crazy X, where you're like starting off slow and then you're getting crazier at the end. Do you have a preference?
No, and I've done both and seen both work. I
Yeah.
think it actually more matters on the copy than it actually does the sequence. Because if you send bad copy, whether you stack it late or stack it early, it's bad copy. And the person is just going to be annoyed either way. But when you write great copy, you will find success both ways.
Yeah.
Because it's really about the message you're sending. And again, if you can get that conversation, because the reader's reading it in their internal voice in their head, they're not saying it out loud. And if you ask them a question instead of make a statement, you're prompting their voice in their head to respond. And if you can start if your cold email literally makes a random stranger that you've never met have a conversation in their head about it, you have won. You have won the battlefield. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a huge win.
Well, again, like you were saying, is that if you're tapping into their internal dialogue and stimulating their conversation and making that further along, then you're doing a much better job than trying to interrupt their internal dialogue with what you're saying.
That's right. That's right.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we'll do one more on this one, and then we'll do the recap. Got one more email on this sequence. Do you see it there, Belal?
Yeah. No. There it is. Okay, I got it.
Okay. Step 3, day 6. So it's a few days after that second one.
Yeah, you've definitely highlighted some of the key things. I mean, I like, so I'm a big fan of this. Sometimes it's a very good strategy, and this is to, the 14 participants we have on the call. This is kind of advanced stuff, but like, there's actually a really great strategy to emailing the wrong person who you know is maybe 1 to 2 degrees away from the right person. So let's say I want the CFO. I'm going to purposefully email the controller, knowing that the controller is not the right person. And I'm actually going to say that in my email. Like, normally I speak with CFOs, but I wanted to email you first because, and you're going to say why? Because you're trying to get a little bit of information from them. What ends up happening if you run that sequence the right way, they'll say, well, actually it's so-and-so's job. And then you're going to take that exact email, you're going to add so-and-so and remove the other person. And it's going to be a continuing thread of like, they told me to email you that you would be the right person. I hope they got that right.
Right.
The reason why, and you go straight into it and you create this web of influence because it's like, well, yeah, that is my job. I do own that. So it's a good thing you emailed me about
Yeah.
it. It's not an easy strategy to pull off. So you don't do it haphazardly, because if you do it haphazardly, you're going to piss off the controller and the CFO.
Yeah.
But believe me, it works more often than it doesn't, especially when you're upfront about the fact that I know you're the wrong person, but you're in the sphere of the right place where I need to be.
Right.
Like, I know you're not the CFO, but I think you can probably help me with this, because I know you probably report to the CFO or you're familiar with the finances.
Right.
You just go straight into it. So I like that they said this part here about, I want to make sure I'm reaching out to the right contact. I think there's probably a better way to say that, to be like, I've been emailing you and I have the feeling you might not be the right contact. Do you recommend someone else that I should be emailing? And put it as a question,
Right.
instead of kind of as a statement of like, just wanted to make sure we're reaching the right contact.
Yeah, and me personally, I'm not really into the word contacts in this context. That's a weird thing to say, but I'd rather say, are you the right person? You know, because contacts makes it sound like you're writing a list of contacts that you're trying to sell to. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
What's interesting is that, so you were on sequence practice number 1, and if you can recall, we had Sierra. We did a sequence breakdown with her.
Oh, hers was great. Yeah, I remember it. Hers was amazing.
Yeah, and so she actually sent us back a video kind of describing her experience. It was on our webinar with Sales Hacker yesterday, so you should be able to see the recording soon. But she actually mentions in the webinar that she applied what we said. So using this approach that you just described, applied what she said, what we said, and basically she used to email somebody as soon as she gets the referral, right? But she applied our recommendations of calling right after, okay? And she was mentioning that the first time she did it, she had a 20-minute conversation with her prospect, moved the deal along. I believe she said she closed it. If not, it was at least close to close. So just on that one little change, where instead of waiting an hour doing an email, she did the cold call right away. She used that approach that you're talking about there and got a deal.
Awesome.
So
That's awesome.
yeah,
It works. It works. And people who are in the wrong position but near the right role will respond very well if you're upfront about that and you're just telling them the reason why, and you give them that reason why.
right.
Because we are innately helpful, right? So back to the psychology of all this, why does it work? Because we want to be helpful. Like, nobody likes to wake up and say, I'm an unhelpful bad person, right? We like to think of ourselves as good people that are helpful. So when somebody comes to us looking to help, if I'd be like, hey, I'm lost, I believe I'm near where I'm supposed to be. I've put in the effort to figure out where I am so far, but I just need a little bit of help, getting to where I'm supposed to be. The significant vast majority of people would help that person. So like, hey, yeah, you're putting in an effort here. You're just slightly off. And you're slightly off. You're just one block away. Right. So you want to create that kind of a feeling. We're already conditioned as people to respond to that. And I think this email could get that with a few tweaks. And you've highlighted the right stuff here, Jeff. It's the same subject line again, boring, change it.
Yeah.
Hope you're well, don't need it. asking for a pilot in the same email you're asking if you're reaching out to the right contact, that's not, yeah, that's competing interests right there.
Yeah.
And then, please let me know if the timing is not right. And any feedback or insights. Again, you're asking for two things there. Is the timing right or not? Do you want to reconnect later or not? Are there any feedbacks or next steps? Too many things.
Yeah.
What is it? What do you want? What do you want?
On in these few sentences, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? Like as you pointed out, there's several good things in here. They're just kind of grabbed from other emails and put into one, right? Like if you took each of these concepts and built an email around each of them, then you'd actually have some pretty good outreach here.
Yeah, I think you would. Yeah, if they change that opening line to be like, I realize you might not be the person who handles advertising and then would be interested in competitive ads. Who do you recommend I contact regarding that? That would be an interesting opening. And then be like, I also write, it may just be that the timing is not right. So just, feel free to correct me,
right,
or something like that. And I get you, they'd probably get some responses that way, especially since it's step 3, day 6.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so I'm actually looking at this and I'm thinking, maybe they're able to get some response in 3 emails, but I feel like there should be more touches to this and
For sure.
different
For sure.
ones, right? I feel like there's a lot to this story that you're just not telling in three short emails, and that it deserves, I guess, more space to, as you say, get that brand recognition, right?
Well, the second email can become 3 if they turn those bullet points into questions.
Right.
Or right there alone, they can turn this 3-step into a 6-step. If they add a bump email to each of the steps as well, they just turned it into 12 emails.
Totally. So without further ado, let's talk. Let's turn off the screen share there for a second. Let's talk 3 takeaways from this. So what are 3 things that, based on what we just looked at, that we can tell our audience here to take away from this conversation?
Great challenge there, Jeff. I'd say the first is, when you're emailing somebody cold for the first touch, these whole I hope, I love, I'm open to, free, all these sort of words, those aren't words you would tell a stranger on the street. Just take that language and kill it.
Kill the pleasantry.
I don't need to know that you love my company and that you'd love to meet me, and death to all that.
Yeah.
All right.
Would that be the fluff, Belal?
That's definitely the fluff. So get rid of all that nonsense. Yeah. Ask questions. Don't make statements. Again, you need to know if this person is even interested in what you're talking about. If you're making statements about your product and bullet point lists, you're missing the point. The point is to start a conversation, and conversations don't start with statements. They start with questions. How are you? Nice to meet you. Tell me about yourself. Right? It's the same thing with your product. What would you do differently if you could? How would it be if you had? What would it be like with, these are the things you want to turn your features into questions and ask those to your prospect. And I'd say that the third thing is, with these call to actions, we saw some stuff getting lost in translation there. If you don't think the person is the right contact, don't ask for a pilot, right? If you're hitting them on the first touch, don't ask for a demo or a time to meet. They know how to hit reply. Nobody needs an explainer on it. Everybody knows that they can email you back. If you're sparking the right curiosity, they will engage, whether that's through multiple opens of an email or a direct response. You're going to see it